Hello, everyone. It's time to do a little bit of an add-on that happened for what was many people's Game of the Year last year. It's time to see a Moogle.
Ah, that is some crisp texture going on there.
Oh man, what mythical platform were you able to play it on where they could show off this intense palm head graphics?
Well, guys,
I don't know. It's probably like the 5th PlayStation I've had in my life.
I know. Man, Sony should really release a PlayStation 5. It would be cool if we could get an upgrade to the PS4 after all these years.
So I see that they increased the quality of the JPEG, but it's still visibly JPEG.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yep, that's me. You might be wondering how I got myself into this situation.
Anyway, this is entirely new story territory for Final Fantasy VII Remake. We actually never got to see what Yuffie was getting up to this early in the original game.
This is purely to explain why the hell Yuffie's outside of Calm in the first place.
Yeah. I mean...
Otherwise, why the hell is she there?
I always got the...
explain why she left Wutai?
I always got the sense that she left on her own, but it's cool that she was, like, actually sent on a ninja mission. You know? Also, this is the nerdiest thing ever. She actually rehearses her spiel to the Avalanche members.
Yeah, because she wants to look cool for them. She's such a toonie.
What do you mean by that?
She thinks the whole, the darkness in my right eye is pulsating when I meet you and all that stuff.
So she's a weeb, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, basically. Yes. She's a homegrown weeb. That's impressive. Anyway, Yuffie is delightful in this. This is, like, the best she's been, both, like, in terms of character and mechanically since ever.
Yuffie is great mechanically. It's weird because she's not the best playing character in her own story here. It's more what she can mean for the party system in the next game, because on her own she's not that great, but she's the ultimate utility player.
Oh yes, that's basically what a ninja should be, really, so I'm happy with it.
Ninjas aren't really great for, like, damage output or soaking up hits or whatever when it comes to these sort of RPGs. They're either, like, the status kind of characters who, like, poison or paralyze people,
or they're your upgraded thief.
She also just looks hella fun to use.
Oh, she is. For just so everyone knows, this is a New Game Plus version. If only because there's not really anything to explore. The game gives you your new weapons basically as you go.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. There's nothing to explore. It just no point dragging things on.
Yeah, it's pretty linear, unfortunately. I think they could have done a little bit more with it, but, like, Yuffie mechanically, probably the best thing about her is the most basic. Since she's a ninja, she has an excuse to have, like, a really good air game. So she's, like, the one character who doesn't have to fight all awkward against the airborne enemies. I kind of wish she was in the main game because of that, you know? I
mean, next game, so.
Yeah.
I mean, Yuffie has a lot going for her, because not only is she a good air game, she is a good chaser, because one of her main mechanics is that she throws her little boomerang thing, and then when you want to, you can just zip to where the boomerang is still hitting, and then keep hitting from there.
That's cool.
Yeah, she is also every element in one, because she can augment her basic attacks with elemental stuff. Again, but her issues are that she is very squishy, and she is not very high damage output.
I wonder if you, like, were to use the elemental material on her weapon to give her an elemental attack property, would she be able to augment it with another and attack with 2 elements at once?
There's no elemental in her story, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
It's something to think about in the next game.
I'm just thinking about, like, is that a possible combination? Because that would be cool.
Yeah.
That said, she's not exactly a powerhouse.
Dynasty Warriors vibes, actually, from the way that she, like, attacks. Like, there are a couple of different characters in Hyrule Warriors that look like they fight like this. I mean, I'm sure that the combat in this game is much more fleshed out than the typical Dynasty Warriors. But,
what's the Japanese history version of Dynasty Warriors? Because I know there is one.
Sengoku. No, I think that's the English localization, but Sengoku Basara by Capcom.
Yeah.
which had some very wild out there anime seasons.
Oof.
But I mean, those games are all about like ninjas and giant ridiculous flips and stuff. And
Yeah.
I can tell already that Yuffie's combat's much less grounded than like Cloud's, which of course makes sense. She's the... Oh, is this one of those Sephiroth clones?
Yes.
It kind of just like illustrates my favorite thing about Final Fantasy VII Remake's action combat, and kind of the thing that makes me like actually really approve of them going the action combat direction in this, is that with all these action mechanics, they have a lot of room to really show off the character's uniquer aspects, rather than it all just being a stat game, which didn't really do much to, make any party members worthwhile.
I never played as Yuffie in the original game. There was no reason to.
I tried to play as most of the characters when I played the original game, and Yuffie's fine. She just suffers from being a generalist in a game system where
You want a specialist instead, because it gets the job done faster.
Everyone can be a generalist, so you don't want a statistical generalist. You want your generalists to be at least good at one thing, so that you can slant their materia setups in that direction.
Honestly, I prefer RPGs where you can lean more specialist in your characters, because if every character can do everything, your choices feel less important.
I mean, that's one of the many reasons why I just generally don't care for job systems very much. Because if everyone can be a ninja, then what does it matter?
Well,
it's less about the specific character in that sense, and more about like your job layout. It's more, job systems I find are, generally speaking, more for the players who like customizing their team, as opposed to the nitty-gritty combat tactics. It's more about the fighting happens before you fight.
When it comes to the job system, like I actually like find that a little bit more compelling than the old school materia system or the junction system, simply because you have to commit to the job, at least temporarily.
To an extent. I don't mind the idea of it. Most RPGs, just from my taste, don't do it super well. That's why I like the Octopath one so much. Because like you can add on any job you want, but Ulbrich is still the warrior, Cyrus is still the black mage, etc.
It certainly makes it a lot easier to find out which combinations are good, versus the easy comparison with Octopath Traveler's Bravely Default. And Bravely Default had an issue where the game's really hard when you don't know what you're doing, but then once you do know what you're doing, the game becomes really easy because you found the
job
combinations.
that works.
Like, for example, one of the combos I used in the original Bravely Default was the Dark Sword. I forget all the job titles, I'm sorry. But there's the Dark Knight kind of job where you use your life to boost up your power. And then there's also the the Sword Mage that can put different spells onto your weapons so that your weapon has that element. So if you put healing on your sword, then when you use your life to make your attack stronger, you then heal all the damage you get back, and so you get free stronger attacks. And Bravely Default is all about finding those ridiculous combos, but again, there's something like 80-something different combos, so it takes a long time to find those unless you just stumble into them normally.
A lot of old JRPGs tend to be like that, where they're quite challenging until you figure out the things that work particularly well, but the game is designed to be challenging if you're not using that stuff.
It's why I feel more stuck in their job character games. Like, obviously, you can do the Octopath thing and add on to them if you want, but if a character in the situation is still going to be the warrior or the mage, kind of no matter what, and you add on to them, you can design the game more around that.
I feel like
that leads to a better difficulty curve, in my opinion.
So, I know that the actual execution of this mechanic was not good, from what I've heard in the original version. But a nice middle ground I've found are games that evolve upon Final Fantasy X's Sphere Grid. I found are a nice happy place where you can customize your character within their role.
There's actually a story behind that. The Sphere Grid in Final Fantasy X.
Are we talking international version or US?
So I've never played Final Fantasy X. From what I have heard through the grapevine, the original version was bad, and it got much better in the international version.
I wouldn't necessarily say the original version was bad. It was just a lot more restrictive until later on. Which,
yeah, there wasn't much you could do. It was more of a proper level up system in the original version, which is weird.
It wasn't like entirely restrictive. If you found like lock spheres in certain places, you could break out into other people's paths earlier than the game necessarily encourages you to do it. But the fun thing is, Europeans didn't get that version. They got the international version. So for a long time...
Quick aside here, this on your first playthrough of Yuffie's story, these guys will kick your ass.
Oh yeah, I remember watching.
What, the two random firewolves with 300G and a fire ring?
This was the place where Maximilian Dudes first had trouble. Just this fight.
Yeah, because, again, I'm at a high level because I've already done this, and they've already done, like, that much damage to me.
Yeah.
These are, like, among the first enemies in the game, yeah.
Yeah, so Yuffie is extremely squishy.
Yeah.
This is it, and before this, it's like it's your typical guys you've already played in the game, so they're not that hard. These guys, it's also a 2-on-1 fight, so this is the game saying you're Yuffie, you're a ninja, run the hell around.
Yeah.
But I want my ninja to stand in place and take shots over and over again. What are you talking about? Oh yeah, just a random question. Do you start at level 1 in this, or like 10?
Yes.
Oh, you do.
Yuffie is straight up starting out.
Okay, so like, yeah, you lost a couple hundred HP with, I assume, some semi-decent defense options. So,
yeah.
like,
I wonder if this scales the enemy levels a bit though.
Possibly. I don't entirely think so, because the small fry were like not a threat at all. But
fair enough.
I imagine maybe a little bit, but not too much.
Okay. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Sphere
something
Grid.
about Final Fantasy, the Sphere Grid. Yeah, you could
okay.
break out a little bit earlier in the original version.
For the longest time, European players didn't know what we Americans were complaining about when we complained about the Sphere Grid, because they got the international version, which has the Expert Sphere Grid. And the Expert Sphere Grid has the opposite problem, where right out of the gate, it's almost too hard. Everyone starts like in the center and can
you got
freely
to fan out, and you have no idea where to go.
Yeah, so like if you know what you're doing, it's great. It's a great way to re-experience the game. But by golly, is it rough going into the Expert Sphere Grid in a new game? That said, Expert Sphere Grid does bring something that, honestly, I wish the original Sphere Grid had, and that's like, near the center, there are these nodes that you can fill that give characters an ability that lets them hit an enemy, and if they kill them, they turn them into a specific sphere. Which is like, yeah, I could have used that at that point in the original game where I always ran out of ability spheres and had to hang around like a dumbass on the Sphere Grid because I didn't want to pass by the abilities that I couldn't get.
You got this.
Yuffie seems to be doing a better job than I would at just ignoring these random cultists wandering around.
Well, they're not really cultists.
That's what I would have thought if I saw these guys, and I didn't know what the hell they were going around. It's just like you see random people with tattoos chanting nonsense, and Yuffie's just like, wow, that's weird. Anyway, back to what I was doing.
There is a reason.
You also have to remember that Yuffie does not care about Midgar at all at this point in the game.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's some weirdos walking around. It's not my business.
Anyway, welcome back to the Sector 7 slums. So now we know what point in the timeline this is taking place.
Yeah, Cloud and Tifa have already cleared the place out.
In fact, I think you can see the scoreboard Cloud left behind.
Mm-hmm.
See, now we know exactly when this takes place, because it's when this news broadcast was on the TV.
Basically, right now, Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa are up top at the Sector 5 reactor fighting Airbuster. Or maybe they've already fought him. I don't know.
I think Cloud is busy with Air.
Oh no, they just blew up the blew up the bomb.
Yeah, Cloud is busy with Aerith. Tifa and Barrett are back at 7th Heaven, just kind of hanging around waiting for him.
But I can do that.
I do like this kind of stuff in these sorts of things, like trying to... Wait, did she just say in the middle of a crowd, "Oh man, go Avalanche, I'm gonna join Avalanche"?
Yeah. No, she is not very conspicuous.
So, you're
Inconspicuous.
Sorry.
Follow me.
That said, she's lucky she's in Sector 7 where, well, everyone just, quietly supports
They-
Avalanche.
Also, it's like also Baron and Tifa do not do a good job of hiding it, so they all know anyway.
But it's not like I've
Yeah.
Midgar.
It's a pretty big
Tifa,
open secret.
you ready for our landslide meeting
It is a code name.
later today?
Huh.
Yeah.
I can't believe
Yeah.
you sent a kid to do this job.
This kid could
Come to my bar.
Seeing your fresh face is all.
Oh, don't worry. I know exactly what you're saying.
Give me a break, will you?
Also, we saw our trio of sidekicks over there.
Well, here we are. Ladies first.
It is nice to have Yuffie in the game, though, because she legitimately, I do find, to be one of the most entertaining characters in Final Fantasy VII.
Also,
like,
one of the
original.
most underutilized in the expanded universe because she just kind of appears in Advent Children briefly, calls Sid a sexist because funny, and
Yuffie is weird because she was cut to be a required party member super late in development of the original game.
yeah.
So it's like it's clear they had plans for her, but it's like the game just didn't have room for her.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, her character doesn't really do a lot for the story. It's mostly just a tie to Wutai and all the stuff that's going on over there, plus, comic relief, because you can't just have Barrett doing that role. But with that said, I feel like maybe the underutilizing of her in other stuff, especially in the 2000s, is, I think, coming from a point of a lot of people just thought Yuffie was lame. Like the running jokes were, "Oh, Yuffie sucks, Sith sucks," and then Final Fantasy VII related stuff got much darker in the mid 2000s with your Dirge of Cerberuses and
Your Advent Children.
It's
and
it's
stuff
it's
like
it's funny you bring up Dirge of Cerberus, but we'll get to that.
Considering who's in this game.
I'm surprised they went there, to be honest. I'm kind of glad they did.
John's reaction to that was hilarious.
Oh yeah, you might be wondering where John is. He didn't want spoilers because he hasn't played this yet, so he's, I don't know, doing his anime training arc off stream. Wait, is he giving everyone Setsu beans?
She's
Wutai
giving them
beans.
a special nut that's kind of a delicacy, but as you can see, there's a problem with it.
Can you eat these things?
A little too hard for everyone. It's part of your ninja training.
Guess you do.
Sheesh, you ninjas are insane.
It's not a Wutai thing, it's a ninja thing because even the actual Wutai in there can't eat it.
I gotta head out.
Is that like a
Ready
ninja
for pickup by
joke that I don't get because I'm not Japanese?
No, it's just a
now. Nah, I
joke
got
they
this.
gave her for some reason.
Besides, you reek of trouble.
Did Yuffie tell Avalanche that she was going to come beforehand?
She is not working with Barrett's sect of Avalanche.
Oh,
Is
the
the
other
thing.
branch. Okay.
Yeah, which it's cool. We get to see a little bit more of what they were up to. So,
And this is that other branch.
Yeah, generally speaking.
Okay.
You're welcome. So the materia I'm looking for is in the shimmer.
Which it also explains why the main branch of Avalanche was there to rescue them during the Shinra Tower stuff as well.
Did you just say?
oh,
Didn't mean to offend you.
you see, I
But hey,
spoiled.
It all works out. So.
I spoiled the beginning and I spoiled the end, but I'm missing the middle, to be honest.
Well, we don't see that, but this does explain why.
No, I mean
All
I
the
miss.
main lane-
I mean I'm missing the middle of Intergrade.
No, I know. I'm talking about that too. It's like we don't see that from Yuffie's perspective, but it does explain why they're there. Because it's like
Oh.
You should talk
because like the whole point of Yuffie being here is that they're going to steal a bunch of materia from the Shinra building.
All right.
You look kind of nervous.
And is it just like normal materia, or is it like the big special materia?
No, the big special materia.
Okay.
Well,
Is it specifically the one that whose its face was...
Scarlet was working on, yes.
Okay, all right.
So right off the bat, I'm happy to say that like even just watching this, I can tell that the game runs much more smoothly.
Yes.
Yeah, the frame rate's
that's the SSD
definitely
for you.
smoother. Was it 30 on PS4? 30 frames per second?
Depending on what modes you were doing and which
Okay.
version of the PS4. Because PS4 Pro, I think if you lowered some graphical settings would be 60, but it was mostly 30.
Yeah.
I don't remember if PS4 Pro even had an option for that. Unfortunately, I can't check because I don't have my PS4 Pro anymore. But, you know.
No, the PS5 makes the game run super smooth.
Yeah, I think that's, again, we were talking about this, I think, in Spider-Man at one point, but one of the biggest things the PS5 and whatever the newest
Series
Xbox
X.
is called is mostly just that games run a lot better.
You know, it's confusing to even talk about the new ones because what you're supposed to call them is the Xbox Series consoles. But that just makes it sound like you're talking about every Xbox.
Yeah.
Xbox Series Xbox Series 360, no scope. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
What the hell's up with that shirt? What is that woman's shirt?
Nomura.
yeah, that's pretty much the answer to that
Yuffie,
question.
take that ridiculous thing off. Jesus.
Got all the info you need? You know about the VR combat.
So now they're telling about stuff to do while we wait for our extra character.
Of course I do. Why wouldn't I?
Yuffie trying to bluff her way through every conversation.
Stimulates.
Oh, just give up.
Kinda.
The amusing thing is that everyone can see right through her.
I wonder why. I could never imagine why that would be the case. Now, just a random question. You get Intergrade when you buy the PlayStation 5 version of 7 Remake, right?
Yes, I believe so. Or if you have the PS4 version and pop it in, you can get it for $20 as DLC.
Okay. Yeah. How expensive... sorry, you just said $20. I meant to say, can you play it like right from the beginning, or do you have to like
I believe so. It also, the system obviously does the whole save transfer thing.
So
Yeah.
if you
as
have
well.
the,
If you have the save on your PS4, you can just move it to your PS5 and it's there. I think if you have a base game, no save file, it's your first time getting it, I think you can just play this on its own.
yeah,
But,
because
but don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure.
yeah.
Also, hi Fort Condor.
Oh, this was a genius move, actually. The Fort Condor minigame from the original game is now just like a board game.
In-universe board game, and you run into tons of people who play it. Like, obviously, Biggs and Wedge play it, but you also run into like the Shinra middle manager you see a few times in the story, and he's playing it, and you can challenge him to a game.
Honestly, they
It's
should have had
great.
this in the main game so that it would have more time to breathe.
Possibly, but
Okay,
like
I
it-
never understood how this minigame worked, to be perfectly honest.
okay. So functionally, you have three different classes. You have attacker, you have ranged, and you have defenders, and it does the whole Fire Emblem triangle situation where one's just better than the other. You obviously have your hit points, which are your hearts, and you have the amount of damage they do, which is the swords. Functionally, your only goal is to get to the other side and beat their main base. Easier said than done, but
I feel like people will understand this game better. Like in 2021 when mobile tower defense games are so common. But it's basically Plants vs. Zombies.
yeah, basically. The game can get really mean and hard on later difficulties of this because it doesn't let you challenge anyone right away. You have to beat every rank 1 person before you can challenge a rank 2 player and stuff. And there's this one NPC who sells more tokens and characters you can buy and stuff.
Yeah.
Using real, like, in-game money?
No, stuff you find, I think. It basically the replacement for like the Chocobo medals.
I'm getting flashbacks to trying to find the fucking Queen of Cards.
Yeah, this is the only one I'll be showing because I'm not good enough to be the higher levels of this game.
I liked the card game in King of Cards, but that game was also a lot more simple.
Wait, what? King? No, I'm talking about Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh.
Trying to find the Queen of Cards.
You're talking about... I thought you were talking about...
It's this protracted goddamn side quest that you can do with the card game in 8, where there are like 4 special players that you all have to beat, and then And then you get challenged by the Queen of Cards. Spoilers, it's actually one of your party members. But, yeah.
I mean, in concept, I often like these little mini games that you can.
I know it's a
do
totally
while
fine.
playing.
It's a totally fine little mini game. It's just it's a little weird in that it's only in the DLC and it gets really hard at the end.
It feels
I mean, by
a
the
little.
end, so.
It feels a little experimental. Like they threw this in here to see how people react to it, so that they could do a more fleshed out version in the next game.
I think
Possibly.
they also just kind of wanted to have the nostalgia moment of it's the thing from the original game kind of thing.
But we can't actually do that in this style of game because it's a little too weird and out there.
Yeah, when I got to this point in the original Final Fantasy VII, I had no idea what anything did because
No one knows how. Absolutely, no one knows how to play that game the first time.
So I forget who I texted, but I was like,
was
what is
it was
this? And they were like, just let the enemies come to the main base and you do a normal boss fight. And I was like, okay, and I did that. And I was
That's
like,
true, but you lose out on the rewards. So
I thought that
Yeah.
you got better rewards if you beat the boss fight, as opposed.
No, you get better rewards if you actually defend the base.
Okay.
I love that frickin' polygonal ass guard dog.
How'd you do that? Totally kicked my ass.
You mean you didn't lose on purpose? Wow.
Yuffie, you're such a bitch. You finally admitted you weren't exactly good at something, then you beat him and you just chastise him for it.
I've kind of got better things to do.
Sure about that? Where
Well, I
is
feel
it?
like she's not the kind of character who likes
Cash,
to be treated like a little kid, despite constantly
She-
acting like a little kid.
Yeah,
You
she
know.
also is a kid. She's like what, 16?
Honestly, like Yuffie, she's had like no room to express herself as a character in anything. Like she did appear in Crisis Core, but she was like 10, and her entire character was a singular joke repeated over and over, where she would just pop in and annoy you during side quests.
That sounds like an actual 10-year-old, though, so I suppose they got that part right.
It's like, you know, and then in Dirge of Cerberus, I think she just existed, really. Like, the most prominent thing they did with Yuffie was explain where her and Vincent were during the ending of Final Fantasy VII. Because, you know, they weren't in the FMV. But, like, I don't know. I'm just so glad that they're finally doing something with this goddamn character.
Yeah, it's nice. And I mean, I assume that they're going to have the same thing for Vincent as well, whenever they get to him.
It's interesting in what they're going to do with Vincent, because I'm convinced there's not going to be like some big overworld, a la like Final Fantasy 15 for this series of games, so we're probably going to come to Nibelheim faster than you normally would in original 7.
To be honest, I'm expecting them to redo the whole Dirge of Cerberus thing, but good this time. Which, you know, I wouldn't be totally against. There are some good concepts in that game. They deserve a second life in a game that isn't
It's actually good.
yeah, that isn't a pile of poo. So, yeah.